What up? Proverbial Boy here with yet another missive of love. And this week's episode, I'm going to invite you in to my mentoring program. I do an 8-week mentoring. We have twice weekly calls. And for today's video, I'm going to invite you into one of those calls where one of the clients had attended the boot camp with us in Atlanta this past weekend. And we're kind of doing a bit of a breakdown of his experience.
I mean, dude, on the program, we're there to push you no matter what you do. So like, even if you conquer your approach anxiety and you do an approach, we're like, all right, well now try to make out with her. You know, we're always gonna push you, but that doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that the standard should be you should only be happy if you get a number or if you get a make out or something. I would just be happy that you did it, and then maybe the next weekend, be happy that you did one more approach than that, and don't even look at like, did the approach go well? It's like, did I do it? Because I mean, that's kind of the level that you're at. It's like you're conquering approach anxiety. So like, go out there and then feel good if you did it. You know, you don't really need to. I mean, it's great. Always push for more. We're always going to push you on the boot camp. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be satisfied with the stuff that you did do.
Yeah, I think very often, you know, you'll see people who are, and I'm not saying this is you, but you'll very often see these people who get into this with this belief that the good times are ahead of them. And when they finally achieve a certain result, whether that be, you know, when I finally get with that particular, you know, type of person that I want to be with, when I finally attain this number in terms of my body count, when I finally get this much money, when I finally do X, Y, Z, make this many friends, whatever the case may be, then I can be happy, right? And they have this erroneous belief that the glory days, the good times are ahead of them, right? And they kind of can't see the forest for the trees. So like for me personally, when I first started out, my mindset was similar to what the guys are talking about here, where I was just stoked to be doing anything. Like when I first started going out, I was pretty shy to the extent, I was pretty much the epitome of bold, not confident, right? Where I would say these kind of like outrageous things from time to time, but ultimately I was quite introverted. And so what I would do, I would simply walk around on the street and make it a priority to make eye contact with people as I walked around on my lunch break. After that, what I would do, I would then say hi to 100 people on the street, more or less. You know, like 100 is just kind of a round number, but I would just say hi to everyone I passed on the street on my lunch break. And guess what? You know, about 10% would be, don't talk to me, get the hell away from me. 10% would be like, oh, hi, how are you? Are you having a good day? And engage me in a brief conversation. The vast majority would simply be like, oh, hey, and just continue, like, or glance over and continue on with their day. So I'm like, okay, that gives my brain the proof, not the promises, that everything's okay by, you know, introducing yourself to people or starting to speak to people. From there, I made those interactions last longer and longer. You know, started to stretch them out to a few minutes. From there, started to inject more of my personality and humor. From there, tried to, you know, start to introduce a romantic angle. From there, maybe get a phone number, maybe go on a date, maybe go to a bar and maybe do all of these things and then try to kiss someone, maybe then try to go home with someone on the same night, maybe then try to, you know, increase what I perceive to be the attractiveness level, try to get more challenging interactions, like larger groups, try to, you know, get all these other crazy things, like have sex on the moon. At this point, that's pretty much my goal, maybe Antarctica, the moon, but it's a progressive thing. But at every one of those steps, I was simply stoked to be there. If they would talk to me, I was stoked. If I got a phone number, I was stoked. If I got, as Matt said, an email, or I had them follow me on MySpace or Friendster. Like that's literally like when I started, you know, he's like, I got an email in 2009. It's like, damn, that was they already passed the spam laws, I think, at that point. Yeah. You couldn't even, but you know, I was stoked, you know, and, you know, even when I started traveling with my colleagues and we started our business, we were often sleeping on floors. We didn't have hotel rooms. We'd sleep on a floor. We would go into Starbucks and like just take over the Starbucks. One guy buys like a small drip coffee while everyone on the back's like, yeah, getting laid, you know, and totally taking advantage of it. Shit, man. Yeah, and you know, sometimes we'd like break into an abandoned, not abandoned, but like a vacant school during the summer and like in a classroom, round table pizza, things of this nature. And again, sleeping on a floor in the dead of winter at some random dude's house in London. I remember I was like, I'm in London. This is amazing. So it wasn't until later that I sort of started to take it for granted and like, well, you know, particularly when I became a professional at it, because then I was like, oh, You got to prove things to, like before I wasn't proving anything. I was just having a blast. Now I'm like, oh, you got to uphold this certain image of a guy who's successful at this. And it took me a while to like, I'm like, well, now, you know, I need to do this and that and the next thing. And I started to kind of take it for granted I began to think that this wasn't the time to relish. These weren't the golden years. These weren't the glory days. That was ahead of me now. You know, and old boy Eckhart Tolle, I'm actually going to see him in Oakland at the Paramount Theater on January 29th. He actually, he has a saying, you know, there's two ways to go insane. One is to not have what you want. The other is to get what you want, which is kind of weird to think about, but it makes sense because, you know, at least when you don't have what you want yet, there's hope, right? Like maybe in the future when I get it, it'll be awesome. But what happens when you get it and you're still the same person? You know, there's an old saying, or not an old saying, like an old, I don't know, wives' tale or conventional wisdom or something like that. I don't know what to call it, aphorism. But where, you know, you take somebody who, a normal person, and you either give them some sort of windfall, say they win the lottery, or you give them some sort of catastrophic event, like they get a limb amputated in some accident. There's going to be like an adjustment period of maybe like 6 months, a year. But then generally those people, their happiness will return to the baseline of where they were before the incident, before the life-altering incident. So it's really about like being happy with where you're at, but then simultaneously striving to move forward, right? You know, there's also a lot of old stories about like Russian cosmonauts who would come back from space and get addicted to heroin and stuff like that because like they like succeeded in achieving all their goals. So I think that this is why this idea of purpose as opposed to small part goals is so important. You've got to really bear in mind the purpose of why you're doing these things, right? You got to bear that in mind. Because if you just keep small part goals in mind, like say, for example, you're out on a given night and you're like, I really want to get in, I want to crack the set, so to speak. I really want I want to be well received when I go introduce myself to people. When that doesn't happen, then you're disappointed. It can often cause this cascading chain of like events, this sort of like shame spiral, where now you go into this sort of like dark hole, circling the drain of despair, and your night's kind of ruined. It's very difficult to get you out of that. Again, even more so if you're drinking. You know, very easy to go into kind of a depressive or even angry. You know, I'd often struggle with that. I go into like this anger mode. Everyone's stupid. So with those small part goals in mind, it's not real. You want to look to a higher principle. That higher principle is the principle of purpose. One thing I always say, it's like at this point, what is my purpose? My purpose in life at this point at age 40, 45, 46 on Sunday is not to get more sexual partners at this point. It's not to get more money necessarily. It's basically to, through studying this stuff further and further and going deeper down the rabbit hole, to come to a more complete understanding of myself when I'm attempting to communicate, so I can communicate more clearly, more consciously, more freely, and thereby be able to transmit that knowledge to others and have that become knowing themselves, right? So from that, again, that's my purpose. That is my overarching purpose. So from that perspective, every single interaction that I have, whether it's successful or not, every single student that I have, no matter how their skill level, is an opportunity for me to move towards that larger overarching purpose. It guides you. It's like a North Star that guides you. And when you're in the moment, you're having these ups and downs when you're out. That's what's going to keep you from, so it's going to keep you plugging away and not getting, you know, too in the weeds, so to speak, you know, kind of lost in the sauce and like, well, this sucks, I suck, it's terrible, you know, everyone's mean to me, like it's not going well. One thing I always tell students is, you got to understand, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting the approach. There's nothing inherently wrong with you per se. They're rejecting your approach. Again, if you look at you look at me, we're roughly the same, you know, in terms of like build, height, physique. You know, it's not like, in fact, I'm older. You might even be taller than me. Whatever the case may be, we're roughly the same. You know, all things considered, we're pretty much the same. Well, how come I'm getting generally positive reactions, or conversely, very displeased reactions in some cases? But you tend to get these very middle of the road. Like they're like, okay, he's nice enough. Okay, nice to meet you. Okay, it's just not making much of an impression either way. Why? What is the distinction? Well, the distinction is I've learned how to convey a certain vibe that's compelling. And how did I do that? I did that over a period of many, many, many years by investigating all of these things, going out, reiterating, like, testing stuff, trying it again. Really just getting a lot of data points so I could begin to see the patterns emerge, right? So I could begin to see those patterns emerge. And not only that, I could begin to get a handle on technique to the extent where it no longer required much of my conscious attention, my intellect's conscious attention. It's just like, okay, we kind of do it. Oh yeah, like I said before, chess masters have spoken about seeing the potential moves before them, not even necessarily in like an intellectually verbalized way, but as these sort of energy colors or something, like these sort of energy pictures that suggests different moves they could make. And that's kind of how I feel when I'm out interacting. It's like, okay, do this, do this, do this. I'm up here on a more meta level. The only things I'm consciously monitoring in an interaction are, as we said before, number one, where am I in the interaction? What's the next step? How do I move it forward? Number two, like what are the behaviors and actions I need to take to move to the next step? Number two, what is the sort of emotional information that I'm getting from the audience I'm speaking to? And what do I do with that information? In other words, how do I need to modulate my tonality in order to sort of to remain harmonious with their vibe and kind of ride the wave in? And then number three, what is the evolving logistical situation, right? Are there any obstacles? Can I circumnavigate those obstacles? Is it even worth it? Should I try? You want to get to that point. So again, like when I'm talking about these small part goals in a given night, you got to understand, if you just if you keep that overarching purpose in mind, those small part goals are going to be achieved along the way. They're going to come to fruition along the way, along with many other goals that you may not even have thought of, right? As sort of like a consequence, sort of like these tertiary goals that might like pop up, and you're like, wow, I didn't know I wanted to do that, but now I have the capacity to do that. Right? So again, as we always say, it's very, very, like no matter where you're at, right? Where you're at right now, it's very, very, and I hope you've seen this, right? Okay, look, average people can do this. Like people just like me can do this. There's really they're not doing anything. Like when you see us out there and we're demonstrating on like on the infield program, you're probably going to think to yourself, and you probably did think to yourself, they're really not doing anything I couldn't do. Right? It wasn't really anything that like you're physically incapable of doing. We weren't like things you're intellectually capable of imagining. It's like, okay, what's the distinction? We've seen what works. We've seen what doesn't work through trial and error, right? Through having done it ourselves and failed ourselves miserably many, many times. And we've seen the things that do tend to get a better result. Okay, let's do those. Like I always say, if going up and going, what's up? If that worked, I would do that. I would simply do that. It'd be a no-brainer, right? But unfortunately, that's not really what works. So I don't do that. I do the things that work. So again, you're at a point where you need to be like, okay, what I'm currently doing is, and to be fair, when you came on program, correct me if I'm wrong, you were like, I haven't really gone out much at all. You would go out and you would just not really approach. You not introduce yourself. You just kind of stand around and understand, like get this feeling of malaise inside. I should be going, but I can't, and this, that, and the next thing. So, well, now, having been through the program this weekend, now you're like, okay, you've actually done approaches. Now you see, okay, very viscerally, okay, this doesn't work. Like maybe before you intellectually were aware, yeah, I've watched videos and they say that I have to do this, not this. Okay, I intellectually understand that it won't work. But now you've experienced it not working in four-dimensional meat space. Like you've seen the look on the face when you go up. You felt the emotions coming off of them. You felt the sort of, not even disdain, but rather just sort of disinterest, sort of lack of interest, lack of attention, and then the brush off. Then you feel like that sort of air of, I kind of want to get away from them, not that you're repulsive, but like there's better things there's more fun things I could be doing than talking to this person. This is kind of boring. You know, there's no there. And okay, so now you've seen, not just in an intellectual sense, in a very visceral sense, this does not work. And now you can begin that process of moving towards and adapting and playing with the things that do work. But in order to do that, you know, it's so important that you get that hands-on experience. And I think that's why, you know, I got to applaud you for actually stepping up and coming on the program, you know. And I think in the future, even though like right now, like I said, at the beginning of the program, you know, like I said, it's not a magical pill where I'm going to like, you know, wave the magical switchblade over you and poof, you turn into Iceberg Slim, the player from beyond history or something like that. It's like, no, it's like going to a personal trainer. We're going to assess where you're at. We're going to observe. We're going to develop a program that's suited to your needs. We're going to run you through the paces of that program, show you how to perform the repetitions, do it with you, tell you about the nutrition, tell you about supplementation, importance of rest, how to use the equipment, yada, yada, yada. And then, but again, on that boot camp, you're gonna do the extra. You're gonna perform the repetitions many times. But then at the end of that program, you're gonna be a level above where you are when you came in. And again, as Eli and fucking Matt can attest. Well, Matt wasn't there, but as Eli could attest to, you certainly did. Like there was an observable improvement from Friday to Sunday evening, right? There was a quantifiable, observable improvement. Again, wasn't super dramatic. Maybe to you it was, at least to me it wasn't, because, you know, it's like, okay, he went from unable to approach and talk much at all to able to go up and create a good vibe and be compelling. Again, maybe you didn't like, you know, set the world on fire and have people like falling to their knees to worship you or anything like that, but that will come. That will come if you want it to. But the thing is, again, you're a couple levels above where you are when you came in on Friday, but now it's up to you to continue to perform the repetitions, continue to internalize those lessons. Again, you were given an orientation and a massive boost of momentum. You're hopefully inspired that it's real, okay? Because that's another thing. You know, I think we were saying earlier on these mentoring calls, we would tell these stories from every weekend. Oh, we did this crazy thing this weekend, and this crazy thing happened in the van, and the student did this, and we did this, and it was so ridiculous. And you'd kind of laugh. And again, I don't think you think it was fabricated, but maybe you thought it was like exaggerated a little bit. But I remember on Friday when you're sitting next to Levi as he's like doing this massage on his young friend, and then they immediately leave while the friends like cheer us on. And we have this like coterie of 8 like college girls like circling around us like moths to a flame. You're like, oh, it is real. Oh, this is real. And moreover, I can do it. You see a lane for yourself where you can actually do it yourself. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I want people to see, because it's very easy. I think that, you know, there are a lot of charlatans out there, quite frankly. There's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of people who have a black background and they're like a handsome fellow, Alpha Johnny. Hey guys, this is Alpha Johnny, and here's the 5 tips to be high value. It's like, what? Okay, does this guy even go out? Did this guy labor in the mines like for 20 years? No, I have. Does he have a team with him that will go out with you that's absolute savages that also live this life to the hilt? No. So again, I want you to believe, like, I think it's easy because you see, again, the market's so saturated with these people now. Everyone and their little brother wants to be some coach, this, that, the next thing. And look, more power to them, but I've been doing this for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been doing this and I'm still doing it to this day. So when you see that, though, you're like, okay, there's a lot of BS. He's probably, you know, this guy's probably exaggerating a little bit. No, we're not exaggerating. Not everyone wants to be this weird cartoon character either, though, right? And I understand that everyone has different goals, but I want you to see what's possible, and then you can decide for yourself where, you know, what you want to do. So we get that inspiration. Obviously, we're going to push you very hard over the weekend. But again, like, here's another thing: we pushed you very hard over the course of the weekend. But my fervent hope is that you did not develop what we refer to as authority dependence, where it's like, yeah, you can do it when we're like crawling up your ass and like encouraging you to go in a very enthusiastic manner, but can you do it when we're not there? So that's going to be the test, right? So that's why, like, at a certain point on Sunday, I was like, look, I can't care about this more than you do. We've been pushing you. Now you got to do this under your own power. And then last but not least, give you that feedback. And I hope you did get those notes. I sent them to you on Sunday. I wrote them on the plane. That very detailed list of post-program notes. And that's going to be your template of things to work on going forward over the course of the next couple months. So, like I said, given all of this, it is very, very possible to make dramatic improvements, in a very short time in your ability to communicate and your charisma, but of course, this is contingent upon you understanding and acting upon the following concepts. Number one, understanding that vision, that purpose for the charismatic life you want to create. What does it look like when you approach? What does it look like when you're at work? What does it look like when you're dealing with your friends, your family? What does it look like when you're just navigating basic interactions with strangers throughout your day? What does that look like? Number two, understanding the demands that are going to be put upon you by the types of results that you want to have, right? So, and I think that that's very clear after you take a program. It's like, okay, what I'm currently doing is not going to work. There are going to be additional demands put upon my communicative system, upon my intellect, upon my emotions, upon my voice, my intuition, my body, my gestures, everything, right? What are those demands that are realistic to get me the results I want? Okay, a keen, clear-eyed understanding of that. Number three, understanding the societal conditions in which you're attempting to achieve these goals. Number four, understanding how inhibition and negative social counter-conditioning is preventing you from moving to that place and achieving those goals. And then last but not least, what can be done about all this? And that's where boot camp comes into play. That's where things like this mentoring come into play. So you're well on the way to achieving all of these things. But again, you're one of the rare few. You're one of the rare action takers who actually said to yourself, you know what? Clearly, something is not wrong per se, but I want to be better, and I can't do it myself. I think a lot of people they're arrogant. They have arrogant beliefs, but you're a smart person. You're like, my time is valuable. I don't want to spend 20 years going out. I don't have the time for that, nor do I have the inclination to do that. I'm not some like crazy person like Jeff who's going to go out every day for fucking 10 years and then go out every weekend for the next 10 years as well. In order to learn this stuff, why not just go to somebody who's already done it and who's been teaching it for 20 years and who knows how to convey that information and that knowledge to me and transfer it into me in a very fast way, right?
I was going to say that most people would not, they wouldn't take the time and money to go fly out to a program and do, the approaches that you did. So this is like, you may feel like, oh no, I'm not doing enough. I'm not, as expressive as some of these drunk dudes in the bar. I'm not like as technically skilled as some of the coaches, but like most people would not, spend the money and the time, fly out to another state, actually do the approaches, stick into the mentoring and actually show up to these calls every week. Because I mean, don't we have like, there's supposed to be like 8 people on these calls and they're not here. There's all, I mean, I'm sure all sorts of like your friends or whatever want to get the same results that you do, but they're not gonna spend the money and time to actually put in the effort to get it. So you are, in the realm of action takers. Now you just want to take it a few steps further to actually achieve some of the goals that you have.
I mean, yeah, and you think about it, it's like a couple, like how much does this cost? A couple $1,000. Whoop-de-doo. In the larger scheme of things, in terms of your overall life, that's peanuts. Most people will spend like $100, maybe even a couple $100 on a night out drinking. So it's like, a couple weeks of drinking or like going to the restaurant. But it's like, no, I'm going to, and I heard a phrase a while ago from my buddy. He said, if you're not making more than $250,000 a year right now, the best thing you could invest in is yourself, like your education, your ability to communicate, your ability to, to internalize different skills. And I truly believe that. I mean, again, I walk the walk. I take tons of different other mentorings outside of this, just for things that I don't understand, right? I spent like 20 grand on personal mentoring last year. I know that because I'm in the process of doing my taxes. And, but in any case, it's like, yeah, look, don't be arrogant about your time. You don't want to learn this stuff from your brother-in-law, or your little bro from work or something like that. Or again, even Johnny Alpha from the local lair.
I would say especially you want to learn it well, because this particular skill set, if you don't get this dialed in, it will wreck your fucking life. I mean, like, imagine if you end up marrying the wrong partner. what would that do to your life? I mean, this has fucking catastrophic results. Like if you go, oh, I'll just kind of put this one. I mean, it's kind of like the person who's overweight and they don't want to get in shape and they don't realize that these little, like, oh, I'll just stay home, I'll just eat it, I'll just eat out today, I won't really get on my diet this month, maybe next month. Down the road, I mean, that's gonna have a catastrophic result on their lives. It's just,
there's nothing wrong with eating out. Brandon does it. It's what he likes to do. He likes how it's just him and it. He wants to slip his tongue inside. Just
we got sick and I was like, can you get COVID from eating pussy? And you're like, no, but you can get AIDS. And
no, you can give it. No, you can give it.
Oh, no, you can get it.
From eating pussy? You can't get COVID from eating pussy. You can get it from, you can give it. You can go, if you breathe heavily and like it like wafts up, they can get it. But long story short, it's like, again, don't be arrogant about your time. We learned this stuff from our parents who probably sucked at it or who married their high school sweetheart and they've been married for like 30 years or something like this. It's like, what are they going to tell you? Like, just be yourself, which ironically is actually pretty good advice, but most people can't, right? Because of the severe inhibition surrounding it. Like they'll tell you be yourself, but they don't believe that. They don't want you to be yourself. They want you to shut the fuck up and sit the fuck down. Don't make noise. Right? That inhibition is so powerful. Like just even like don't be loud. Honestly, that would help. Like just we talk about the Pareto
on the last day when that big ass birthday party, and we were like, we need one of the students to yell loud as fuck, birthday.
Yeah, like just go up and scream birthday.
If they were able to do it like loud as fuck,
yeah, it would have worked.
Without any inhibitions, it totally would have worked. But none of the students could. And that's just that one. Just don't be loud. That's
one thing that I noticed too. I'm out with like Owen a lot, and he's super loud, like to the level he's like just completely obnoxious. And people will look over, people will come over, people will open him, people will speak to him. He's like, Owen's probably one of the loudest people, probably the loudest person I know, just like conversationally. No matter where he is. This is why I won't like ride in an Uber with him. Or if I ride in an Uber with Owen, I'll make him get it. Because if I go in an Uber, if I get the Uber with Owen and then we ride, it's like my star rating will go down. Because he's just like obnoxious. He's like, duh, fucking communism, whores, like duh. Like he's just obnoxious. Completely, and super loud and super obnoxious. Like very
loud.
Yeah, very
way louder than he is in the videos.
Very opinionated as well. So I make Owen get the damn Ubers now. But yeah, like just the ability to go up and just be loud. Well, I talked about this on program. We talk a lot about Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. 20% of the actions and behaviors are going to get you 80% of the results. And it's simple things like squaring up. Like who would have thought? Something as simple as not standing like this when you're speaking to somebody, but looking at them like this and just conversing with them like dead in front of them. Who would have thought that will solve, like honestly, and this is not an exaggeration, that will solve like not the vast majority, but it will solve a ton of the problems that most people have. But at the beginning of every program, I say, oh, you're not going to do it. I want you to do this to every person that you speak to tonight. Just stand in front of them and just talk to them dead in front of them. That's it. Look them in the eye. That's it. And every single person at the beginning of the program says, yeah, I'll do that. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I will. I'm like, you will not. You will not. And so we're going to give you an auditory cue to help you remember. If we notice you're not squared up, we're going to say the Australian sound oi. We'll be off to the side, oi, 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 oi. Oh, okay, and you'll square up because you won't do it. Why? Because there's such a powerful inhibition around facial expression. Right? There's a lot of vulnerability in the so-called facial mode, right? The eyes are the windows to the soul. That's how we send very personal and intensely vulnerable, quite frankly, messages about how what we're thinking, what we're feeling internally. And those messages can feel, again, threatening to the sender. They can feel threatening to you just to stand in front and look in the eye, especially if you're somebody who's been guarded in your communication your whole life as a result of conditioning. And especially if that intention is to pursue a romantic encounter with someone. To stand like this, you can kind of deflect it off, you know. You kind of, but here it's like, no, this is my intention. This is the intention. And if you're ashamed of that, or you have inhibition around that, and you likely will, again, due to the aforementioned negative social counter conditioning, you're gonna be like, this feels really weird to me. But here's again, the thing is, that will not be verbally, like, that will not be intellectually verbalized in your mind. This feels really weird. It's not going to. All that's going to happen, you're just going to turn away. And then here's the even crazier part. So about 95% of clients will turn away, and they'll do that, regardless of having said, yes, I'm going to do it, regardless of being told that's the mission for the evening or whatever. And then when we stand next to them and we start yelling the oi, 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 they literally won't even hear it. The RES will tune it out, to the extent where we're standing right next to them, literally right next to them, yelling, oi, 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 like to the extent that people around are looking at us like, what are these idiots doing? Like, it's so loud. There's no way that they don't hear it. There's no way that their ears aren't picking up the vibrations in the atmosphere and translating that into their brain as information in the environment. Everyone else hears it. How come they don't seem to hear it? How come they don't seem to hear it? Well, because again, the inhibitions around that kind of expression are so powerful that they just blank it out. It's a blind spot. And this is why it's so important to get, again, third party feedback from somebody who's very experienced, because you probably won't even know you're doing it. You won't even know you're doing it. Another one, the stupid hand on the lower back. Like another one of the students this weekend, Matt, he kept doing the hand on the back, and I kept bringing it to his attention. And then on the third day, he's like, yeah, last night I saw myself doing it, and I was like, oh, and I had to stop myself. It was like he had to grab his arm, and he's literally fighting his own arm away. And so, but that's where it starts. Again, awareness is the first step, right? Awareness is the first step. This isn't intended to be like, you suck, you're terrible, this is some inherent failing on your part, but rather, look, these entanglements is the human condition. Everyone experiences these. However, you've deemed them to be useful and necessary in your life for so long that now they're likely below your threshold of awareness. You're not even aware you're doing it. So by, again, coming on one of these programs, by coming on mentoring, by having other people observe and give you that feedback, you'd be like, okay, now I understand how that inhibition is preventing me from living up to the demands that are going to be placed upon me by the types of results I want to have in order to achieve that charismatic vision for my life. So at that point, you can start that process of releasing it. You can start the process of releasing those inhibitions, releasing those inclinations of behavior, and you're no longer this sort of helpless victim of your history anymore. Now you can start making choices of your own choice. You can start, doing things by your own choice and forging a new path. And that doesn't mean, again, like I said, very, very important, not to be like, I suck, I'm terrible, this, that, the next thing. It's like, everyone has this. You're not, take the drama out, destigmatize it. It's not some inherent failing on your part. And again, the best refutation to the idea that it's an inherent failing on your part is by looking at the experience of successful people who have come before you. If you saw myself, Matt, Owen, Julian, anyone that you think of as being good at this stuff when we first started, you would have no doubts whatsoever about your ability to do anything that you see us do socially, right? Because we were probably worse than you, right? Quite frankly, probably worse than you. So the thing is, it's like you once you understand all of that, you can say to those inhibitions, you can say, look, you served me. It's like that Marie Kondo, right? Thank you for your service. This protected me at one point when I didn't know what else to do. And I'm going to honor that, but I don't need it anymore. Let it go. Start forging your own path. There you have it. Like I said, this mentoring program that I do, it's a very, very small, intimate group, and I have to keep it small because of the level of personal attention given to each client every week. Like I said, we do twice weekly calls. There's an 8-week curriculum covering their face, your voice, your body, your intellect, your emotions, your intuitive process, and how this all wraps up into form your gestalt, your overall instrument when you're trying to communicate. And of course, I referred a lot to the bootcamp program, and if you haven't checked it out, I do have a whole ass schedule for a United States tour that I'm doing this year, 2022. You can check that out. I'm going to be in New Orleans for Mardi Gras, which is February 25th through March 1st. And that's going to be a 5-day program. That's going to be the most epic program. I think I got one spot left for that program. I think maybe a couple. But that's truly going to be a life transforming, a very transformative event and a transformative week. I'm going to be in Scottsdale. I'm going to be in Arizona, which is the same thing. I'm going to be in Miami. I'm going to be in New York. I'm going to be in Los Angeles. I'm going to be in Austin. I'm going to be in Denver, and so on and so on and so forth. If you want to take hold of your development, you want to take control of the reins, and you actually want to make a change this year and get this part of your life handled and avoid those catastrophic results that come from not learning this, go to jeffyinperson.com. You can apply for boot camp. You can join us on these epic adventures. They truly are absolutely epic adventures. Myself, my son Eli is going to be there. All of my other assistants who are absolute savages. We'd love for you to join us on this epic adventure. Go to jeffyinperson.com, and I'll see you next time.
Jeffy.